Good day. Merry Christmas. Welcome to Supply Chain India, episode 11. Once upon a time, there were go downs. That's where goods for delivery used to be dumped. Yes, dumped is the word. Go downs are getting a facelift. Now they are called warehouse. No longer goods are dumped but arranged systematically. Picking rightly becomes easier using a better informed workforce, computerized inventory management. After the GST rollout in 2017, there is a lot of talk and action on the warehouse front. There is a lot of media attention also about this once upon a time unfancied core and workplace. Supply Chain India got two stalwarts on warehousing to tell us about the present and forecast the future.
Today, the big problem in the warehouse, earlier the big problem in the warehouse was the clutter in storage. Okay, the disorganized storage and all the clutter that was getting created in storage. Now, the issue is about the clutter in the processes. Okay, because warehouses are now places where a lot of receiving processes take place, storage processes take place, and order processing processes take place, because there are also warehouses where both B2B and B2C operations happen simultaneously at the same time. There is a lot of clutter that gets created in the warehouses by virtue of not organizing the flows, appropriately, and that leads to congestion. It leads to stoppage and also hampers the overall productivity of different microprocesses in the warehouse. So the objective of lean warehousing is to declutter, is to cut the clutter that has got created by either exponential growth or by bad organizing or inability to organize the warehouse in terms of its process flows and continuously increase in volumes, and unable to align, the proper setup and flows of man and material by virtue of the increase in volumes. So a good warehouse from that point of view would be one where, as the volumes scale up, you are able to align your processes, you are able to align your infrastructure, you are able to align the setup, the layout, such that it is able to, align itself and integrate with the increase in the volume, okay, or increase in the number of transactions, okay. So the decluttering process, the relayout process, the alignment process is part of the lean warehouse, and that is what the basic concept of lean warehouse talks about, where you try to lean things up and remove all the wastages that otherwise get created. It is also to do with aspects where many of the organizations do not look at buffering zones. They do not pay attention to where cargo is unnecessarily accumulating, either at the inward side or at the outward side. And we tend to start living with that accumulation. Unprocessed cargo needs to be vacated, and it has to evacuate vital space and get into some sort of storage. What happens is that product which is picked and for some reason has not moved does not quickly go back to the storage system. It continues, to occupy vital space and starts hindering the processes, thereby affecting the productivity of the sub-process. And today, the game is about productivity. Productivity of inward tables, productivity of outward tables, productivity in terms of dock to stock, productivity in terms of stock to dock. And these are productivity measures which mature organizations have started taking so as to understand the overall capability and capacity of the infrastructure in which they have invested.
So, Mansingh, the question to you is this: See, one now of late hearing a lot of lot of news items regarding the warehousing boom. Is it a media creation or it's real?
It's not about boom in the warehousing, it's about a change in the business models. And that's where the relevance of warehousing is coming in a different way altogether. So, for example, if we talk about GST, so GST was all about consolidation of warehousing because earlier the supply chain network used to be designed by keeping into account or keeping into mind the taxation point. With the GST, this particular thing went away and people started talking about consolidation. So that was the different move toward warehousing. But of late, what was happening is because consolidation happened in the larger stock points, the mother distribution center and the regional distribution centers. And what it caused was a little distance from the customers because our last miles or our distribution network are still not as robust as they should be. So the distances, because of the consolidation, distances from the customer started increasing. And as a result, what happened was people started talking fulfillment centers closer to the customers and consolidating the larger spaces. This also got aggravated because of a situation like COVID, where the centralization was actually at the root of it. So that was another point which aggravated this fulfillment center. So it's not only about warehousing, it's about the smaller fulfillment center which are getting built up or which are getting put up by the customer, and as a result of this change in the business model or the overall network, there is a larger requirement or a larger push toward the warehousing. So the warehousing has become a kind of it has come to the focal or focus at this point in time.
We starts hearing a lot about the private equity as well as venture capitalists investing heavily into this segment. Okay, do you really foresee a possibility of a overcapacity being created?
Actually, if you look at the organized warehousing at this moment, the organized warehousing over the total volume of warehouse or godownship in India is hardly 10%. Not more than 8 to 10% of the warehouses are the types that are being spoken about, spoken about in conferences and are covered in different forums. What I mean to say is that when we talk about the organized A-grade warehouse developers, the total volume of all these 4 or 5 top names put together is hardly 10 to 12% of the total warehouse space in the country. Okay, so the point is that there is a huge need to actually address the mass warehouses where they are still being stored in extremely dilapidated structures, extremely backward structures, or I would say structures which are not modern day structures, okay, which are not compliant to several best practices or good distribution practices. So there's a huge opportunity that exists even today in A-class cities. Forget about B and C, which are still untapped, Even the A markets like your Delhi and Bangalore and Bombay and Pune and Ahmedabad and Chandigarh and Hyderabad, Calcutta, etc., hardly 20-30% there, of the total warehousing space, okay, is still best in class. So there's a huge opportunity. Now, this opportunity is something where only the formal players and not the informal market, I'm talking of the formal players or national players, will be able to invest in. Reason being that a lot of land accumulation has to be done. Land accumulation, if it is done, then you are buying land at present price. If you are a landlord of old price, you don't have enough land for it to make it lucrative and attractive for a private equity to invest in. Okay, so there are hundreds of people, young boys, educated guys, etc., who have 2 acres, 5 acres, 15 acres, 10 acres of land. Fine. But at old rates, which was bought by their father and grandfather. But that volume is so small that it is not very lucrative and attractive for private equity players to invest in. Private equity players want to invest in 50 acres plus, 70 acres plus. Okay. Now, to get 70 acres, if you have to buy it today at today's rates, then the question is warehousing viable? Because rentals, an investor who is investing in land and then the building is going to look at the total cost of investment, and then he will compare it to the return that he is going to get. Okay, so is rental lucrative for that, from that point of view, is the other question. So therefore, to answer your, summarize the answer to your question, private equity are still gung-ho about investing in warehousing in India because, as I mentioned to you, because of the fact that there is almost 80-90% opportunity still available to consolidate and to build good infrastructure. There is a pressure from compliance point of view. There is a pressure from industry point of view. There is a lot of pressure from neighborhood pressure that is coming in because a lot of these good warehouses have sprouted around the place, and therefore you have this attraction of current tenants who are sitting in old buildings to want to shift. So that pressure is on, and as a result of which there you will find investment, at least for the next 5 years to 10 years, will continue, and the private equity will still continue to invest in this sector.
Particularly after the COVID, there is a lot of talk about, like a e-com driven, like a necessity for warehousing. And you also spoke about supply chain fulfillment. So what is your take on this? The e-com giving a big boost, particularly in the light of COVID.
So, I will add to what Mr. Siddiqui said with respect to private equity also. So, there are two spaces. There are two spaces where private equity is active right now. One is the space where real estate play is there, and another place where real estate is not there. Service, play is there, because there are many companies who are heavy on real estate, where private equity is, very, very active. But, with companies which are in the service side, they are already, talking about their business model. For example, I'll give you an example. We created a startup, Ms. Siddiqui, last year. We launched a startup last year by the name Veerang, where we're talking about aggregating the, functional but unutilized spaces across the country. And in a span of about 6 months, we could aggregate close to about 26 million of, working space, out of which 6 million square feet was unutilized. And this was, out of about 1,200 warehouses. And this talked about 26% of unutilized spaces in A and B category of warehouses around the country. So there is an issue of utilization of the spaces as well, because many 3PL and large 3PL companies, they have, 3 million, 4 million worth of, space, with them. But, and many warehouses, but the utilization is to the tune of 70%, 72%, 75%. So that's another challenge. So that's one way. Second, Mr. Ramesh, technology is playing its role, and COVID has aggravated, catalyzed this particular challenge, because the physical connect or physical contact is going away. However, with respect to deliveries, until 3D, unless 3D printing, is so active that everyone starts printing everything in their home, the physical delivery will continue to happen. However, wherever it was necessary or wherever it can be done, right, the things have started moving the way e-commerce companies, used to operate. So, for example, it is no more, in the books or publishing or the apparel sector. It has started, getting into the typical B2B scenario as well. There are companies who are investing a lot in technology to make many of these things, without any, physical contact. So yes, people or companies who are investing in technology, and this physical connect was also considered as a kind of cluttering of the process. So more it is contactless, more it can be decluttering of the process. So it is likely to move that way, and technology is likely to play a big role. Now you call it as an e-commerce, or you call as a digitization of the whole process, that's only a lingo that you can, use at any point in time.
We take a short break. When we return, Arif Siddiqui and Mansingh Jaswal will continue the dissection of warehousing scenario.
Are you part of the new fleet evolution? The transition is already underway. Fleets are using data to manage smarter, keeping drivers safe, streamlining operations, keeping customers satisfied. This requires agility and the right platform. Did you know that 94% of road accidents are caused by human error? What if your drivers had an active coach, keeping them engaged and safe and reducing their stress? And what about your managers? What if you could cut their administrative workload and help them gain visibility and control of the fleet? Green Road supports you with one unified platform. Our advanced active coaching gives drivers clear feedback to help them drive more safely and efficiently, and keeps them motivated via personalized information and friendly competition. In the office, online dashboards keep the right information at your fingertips, freeing you to focus on exceptions and pressing issues. Whether you require an app, an installed solution, or other sensors, all are integrated into a single platform that helps you manage diverse operations proactively across the world. The result? Safe drivers, reduced risk, protection for your brand, and savings for your business. The Green Road platform is quick and easy to deploy at scale, even for fleets with thousands of drivers and vehicles throughout the world. Green Road.
Welcome back. You are watching Supply Chain India, episode 11. Okay, what is the maturity level of this WMS? There are also a lot of imported variety and also the homegrown. So, what is your take on this?
Yeah, so very interesting question. I think, so WMS in any case, I think is already given now in all matured warehouses. We will still be a little surprised to know that the penetration of warehouse management system, in the overall warehousing ecosystem is still poor. I would call it as poor. Okay, not less and short. I would actually say poor. There are still very big brands that I am aware of in the country where their warehouses are not run on WMS. They are still run on Excel sheets, and they are accounted for on Excel sheets. And the picking activity is done completely on the memory of one Mr. Raju or Mr. Kajika. Keeps in mind where which product is kept and if that guy is absent, then you can imagine what happens to the order flow. I think WMS and the necessity of WMS has not been able to be understood by the CEOs of companies. I think CEOs have agreed and understood what ERP does in terms of sales order process, OP, and MRP and all the other processes. So therefore, they end up buying an ERP. There are companies who have SAP running in their as their ERP, as not only their accounting system but also their customer relationship management system, and as well as the sales and order processing system. But they don't have a WMS running. Their people are working on registers or Excel sheets. On the other hand, the corporate office are sitting on SAP. Okay, so they haven't given enough importance, to inventory, and they haven't given enough importance to the inventory and order management processes which are executed in warehouses. So warehouses continue to still get that second sister and second brother type of attention specifically when it comes to CEOs and CFOs. Okay. Unless and until they realize, and when the day comes when they start losing orders, and genuinely losing orders, unable to fulfill orders, and the customers start giving feedback by either voting by their foot, when I say voting by their foot, meaning going away to some other to competition, and when loss of sales start taking place, then they start asking this question and getting into the depth of the issue. Warehouse management system, gentlemen, whoever are reading this article or listening to this article, need to understand that WMS is hand in glove, as important. It is one of the hands of business. If ERP is the left hand, then WMS is the right hand, or vice versa. So from that point of view, I think that's what needs to be first understood, and then the penetration needs to start. So we are very poor as far as the penetration of WMS is concerned, to answer your question. And that is true not for only small companies or SMEs. It is even in the large and the medium sector, are still falling short in implementing WMS in warehouse.
You guys will keep talking about supply chain fulfillment also as part of warehousing. So what is the maturity level of supply chain per se, then warehousing, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10?
Let me give you some figures, sir. We conducted a survey on this fulfillment centers last year, and you will be surprised that the WMS adoption in the fulfillment space is less than 15%, which means I absolutely agree with what Mr. Siddiqui said. It's a dismal situation as far as WMS usage in the warehousing is concerned. And it's not about gadgetry, it's not about tool or application. It's actually a culture and a mindset, because technology, to my mind, is not about technology, it's about mindset and the culture. So unless or until this mindset and culture is driven by the CEOs, as Mr. Siddiqui said, right, it's not going to go down. I mean, we cannot put a WMS and then expect the team in the warehouses, which are already dilapidated structure, kind of follow and kind of make it hunky dory. No, it has to be driven. It has to be integrated in the organizational scheme of things. In order to make it that way. But more importantly, what I would say is, WMS right now, it is not about, again, gadgetry. Unless or until it is made as a basic hygiene, the maturity level of warehousing will not go up. And when we talk about training people in the warehousing or supply chain space, what are you training about? I mean, you can enhance the productivity, a manual productivity to a certain level. I mean, a 100-meter sprinter, they've been, trying to break this record within 9.3 seconds. But there's a human element, there's a human limit to it, right? So everywhere, there's a human limit. Unless or until we aid these things with technology, and as I said, digitization, WMS is an important element in this digitization. Because that's where, the whole information ultimately gets consolidated and gets disseminated, to the third parties from the fulfillment centers. But unfortunately, most of the fulfillment centers and even warehouses, they still operate in typical Excel files. Most of the MISs which happen, these are static, data which are, kind of occupying the email spaces of every senior executive. But is somebody working on that big data, or is somebody working on that data which is flowing in and flowing out of the warehouses? Hardly any. So this is, unless or until this is made as a basic hygiene, WMS should be a basic hygiene, not actually to be talked about, big time. It should be the basic stuff which need to be rolled out in the warehouses. And that's exactly what we are trying to do through this, aspect of warehousing, that every warehouse which is coming on board, the prerequisite is start using the WMS, start getting, adapted to this WMS. At least, that's a contribution from our side to, to the ecosystem that yes, if not today, tomorrow you will have to either you adapt or you perish.
Is there a tech phobia as far as the WMS is concerned?
Yeah, no. It is not to do with tech phobia, to be very honest. Fine. It is ignorance. It is complete ignorance. I mean, you will find the CXOs using some of the best laptops when it comes to personal technology. Okay, personal interaction with technology, they would use laptops. They are responsible to make sure that they have an IT head who looks after either implementation of ERP, good emailing systems, etc., etc., etc. But when it comes to WMS, there is nobody talking about it, because initialization of the IT systems are done by corporate IT heads who first talk about ERP, then they have a CFO who they have to please, who talks about an accounting system, and unfortunately the accounting system and ERP, every ERP has an accounting system bolted onto it. Okay, then you have the marketing and the sales guy who talks about the sales and operations process, or the S&OP. Okay, so he talks about that. The sales guy talks about CRM, customer relationship management, so you then add CRM to it. But the supply chain guy, unfortunately, is a timid human being out there somewhere in the corner. He is busy processing all the dirt, and the orders day and night, and he is only asked one question: "Okay, boss, 500 500 transaction का order आया था, why only 480 did you process? Okay, and then he comes back and he says that sir 480 was processed, it's fine, I'm so sorry. He went to discuss WMS, but he got flogged out because he did only 85% of transactions. Okay, so there is no hearing. Secondly, unfortunately, still supply chain activities and warehousing. In the warehousing activities, I would not say supply chain activities. In warehousing activities are still considered to be backyard activities. There is no X factor. There is no sex appeal in that. Okay, so they still continue to be seen, in that light, in that dark light. They have not yet reached the bright spot. What has happened, unfortunately, and I am seeing this very systematically happening, Ramesh, is that now there are divisions in supply chain. Earlier, you could not define supply chain without distribution being a part of supply chain.
Okay.
Okay. Now, when it comes to W&D, warehousing and distribution, logistics, like logistics now, people have created logistics as a transporter. It is an alternate word for transport. Right? So, logistics bolna is no more fad. It's no more fashion. Okay. Supply chain is the fashion. Warehousing bolna is not a fashion. Okay. Because warehousing, you are in the hinterlands of the country. Okay. So that supply chain is now about forecasting. Are you getting my point? Procurement. All this will continue to happen in head office. So the rechristening of supply chain is slowly happening by those guys who don't want to leave their chairs and seats and go to the warehouses and the trucks. Fine. And they will say, I am Vice President Supply Chain. I am Chief Supply Chain Officer. Okay. And that becomes a matter of great concern, where if the overall supply chain realm, is going to get bifurcated and divided further into something which has got an X factor and something which doesn't have an X factor, then I can tell you that the doom of warehousing and logistics is not far away. You will again have backward warehouses. But unfortunately, unfortunately for the business, what is now happening is fulfillment is becoming an important element of measurement. How easy and how well are you able to fulfill? Okay, and that fulfillment is becoming more important as you move from B2B to B2C. So the only savior of the warehouse and the last mile and the long haul is the e-commerce world or the B2C leg, which has a great say, and you come to know about customer satisfaction immediately on your screen because it is an online purchase and the online guy gives immediate 2 stars instead of 5 stars and it brings on your screen and say, oh, today's performance was only 2.5 stars. So that is the savior. Okay, same is happening in the B2B segment as well. Okay, where retail outlets for the company and dealers and distributors or retailers for the company are able to give immediate online marks, to whether delivery happened on time, what are our issues. So I think that part of IT is helping and bringing out and pronouncing the challenges as well as highlighting the good performances of warehouses and distribution systems.
Yeah.
From that point of view, I feel it is to bring and understand how important, So CEOs, I was talking on a CEO forum a few weeks back, and I was telling them that you have 2 factories. Okay, the problem is that you only look at one factory, the plant. Fine, you talk about the plant. You don't talk about the plant which is serving the customer, which is the warehouse. Plant which is serving the customer is not your manufacturing center. The plant which is servicing the warehouse servicing the customer is your warehouse. The plant which is servicing your retail network is don't focus on this plant. If you don't focus on this plant, fine, then you are only taking care of one hand, the other hand will become weaker and weaker, and then this plant will have nothing to do. So I think balancing the act is very important, and renewed focus on both the plant, on the second plant, is important. That's why technology, and then you will find technology will start going there. You know, technology will start going there. I have also recently told HR teams, you know, in one very large corporate, I was talking there on supply chain, and I was asked this very similar question. I said, in your HR performance rating system, you should check whether all your corporate heads, the CXOs in your organization, your general managers and so, head of region and head of sales and head of all these guys, how many times do they visit the warehouse? How many of them have been and sat on in a truck to see how difficult it is to deliver material, or in a small tempo to go and deliver material to their retailer? And how many of them have experienced this? How many of them have driven from Bombay to Nashik on a truck and realized all the challenges that they are facing, the people are facing? Unless and until there is appreciation of these challenges and problems that the fulfillment team is going to face, there is going to be no reason for you to be concerned about what is happening in the backyard. Bring the backyard to the foreyard.
That brings us to the end of episode 11 of Supply Chain India. Hope you liked it. Give your feedback, share, subscribe. We'll be back with another edition soon. Stay safe, stay healthy. Goodbye.